The rain was coming down in sheets when my husband threw my suitcase onto the front porch. Not handed it to me. Threw it. The latches burst open and my clothes spilled across the wetwood, soaking up water like they were trying to absorb my humiliation along with the rain. Before we continue, please hit the like button and subscribe. This story get darker before the sunrise, but trust me, the story is so sweet you will watch it twice. Let's dive in. Get out, Derek said from the doorway. He didn't even have the decency to look sorry. I'm done pretending. I stood there in my work clothes, pencil skirt, blouse, heels that were already ruined from the puddles, staring at the man I'd been married to for 5 years. The man I'd put through law school while working 2 jobs. The man whose student loans I'd paid off with my inheritance from my grandmother. The man who'd just made junior partner at his firm and apparently decided he didn't need me anymore. Derek, please. Can we just talk about this? There's nothing to talk about, Claire. I've met someone else. Someone who understands my lifestyle. Someone who fits into my world. He glanced back into the house. Our house, the one I'd made the down payment on, and I saw a flash of blonde hair. She was already inside. Already replacing me. Who is she? I asked, even though I didn't want to know. Melissa. From the firm. She's a third-year associate. Smart. Ambitious. She gets it. Gets what? Gets that I'm going places. That I need a partner who can keep up, not drag me down. Drag him down. As if working 60-hour weeks as an administrative coordinator while he built his career was dragging him down. As if emptying my savings account to pay for his bar exam prep course was dragging him down. I paid for everything, I said, my voice shaking. Your school. Your loans. This house. And I'm grateful, he said, in the tone people use when they're not grateful at all. But that doesn't mean I have to stay in a marriage that isn't working. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. You'll get what's fair. Your lawyer? I laughed, and it came out bitter. Of course. You already have a lawyer. I'm being smart, Claire. You should do the same. Now please, leave before I have to call the police. He closed the door. Actually closed it in my face while I stood there in the rain with my clothes scattered across the porch. I heard the lock click. Then I heard her voice, Melissa's, saying something I couldn't make out, followed by Derek's laugh. The same laugh he used to have for me, before success made him forget where he came from. I stood there for I don't know how long. Long enough that Mrs. Peterson from next door came out with an umbrella. Claire, honey, she said gently. You can't stay out here. Do you have somewhere to go? Did I? My mother had died when I was 10. My father had passed away 3 years ago, leaving me with nothing but a small life insurance payout that went straight to Derek's student loans. I'd lost touch with most of my friends during the years I was working multiple jobs to support my husband's dreams. My sister lived in Portland, and we hadn't spoken since she told me Derek was using me. Turns out she'd been right. I'll figure something out, I managed. Mrs. Peterson helped me gather my clothes and drove me to a motel on the highway. She paid for 3 nights over my protests, pressed $200 into my hand, and made me promise to call her if I needed anything. I spent that first night in a motel room that smelled like cigarettes and cleaning products, sitting on a bed with a floral comforter that had definitely seen better days, and took stock of my life. I was 32 years old. I had $1,847 in my personal checking account, the one Derek didn't know about, the one I'd opened last year when I started to suspect something was wrong. I had a job that paid $45,000 a year, which was decent but not enough to afford an apartment in Derek's neighborhood. I had a car that was paid off but needed new tires. I had 2 credit cards that were nearly maxed out from helping with temporary expenses that were never temporary. I had nothing. I sat there on that motel bed and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. Then I dried my eyes, opened my laptop, and started looking for apartments I could actually afford. That's when I found my father's wallet. I'd kept a few of his things after he died. His watch, his wedding ring, a leather wallet he'd carried for 30 years. I'd tucked them in the bottom of my suitcase years ago, unable to let them go, but not quite ready to deal with them either. Now I pulled them out, turning them over in my hands. The wallet was worn smooth, the leather soft with age. I opened it, not sure what I was looking for. Maybe just comfort. Maybe just a connection to a time when someone actually loved me without conditions. Inside were the usual things: his expired driver's license with a photo that made him look older than he was. A picture of me at my college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning. A few business cards from people whose names I didn't recognize. And a credit card. I pulled it out, frowning. It was metal, heavy in my hand. Black, with silver lettering. No bank logo I recognized, just a name. Rothschild Private Banking and a number. My father had been a high school English teacher. We'd lived modestly. Not poor, but definitely not rich. He drove a 15-year-old Toyota. He packed his lunch every day. He wore the same 3 sport coats in rotation until they literally fell apart. What was he doing with a credit card from a private bank? I turned it over. The expiration date was 2025, this year. It was still valid. But that made no sense. My father had died 3 years ago. Why would the card still be active? Unless someone had been paying the bill. But who?
And why?
I sat there staring at the card, turning it over and over in my hands. It was probably maxed out. Or maybe it had been canceled after his death and just hadn't been destroyed. There were 1,000 reasonable explanations for why this card would be in his wallet, and none of them involved money I could actually use. But I had $1,847 to my name, a motel room for 2 more nights, and a husband who'd locked me out of my own house. Reasonable explanations didn't pay for security deposits. I took a deep breath, grabbed my phone, and dialed the number embossed on the back of the card. It rang once.
Twice.
Then a smooth, professional voice answered. Rothschild Private Banking. How may I assist you? Hi. I have a question about a credit card. I gave her the number. 1 moment, please. A pause. Then, in a distinctly different tone, may I ask who's calling? Claire Donovan. Well, Claire Bennett. That was my maiden name. This was my father's card, Richard Bennett. He passed away 3 years ago, and I found it in his things. I was just calling to see if it's still active or if I need to cancel it or... Ms. Bennett. The woman's voice had changed again, sharper now, urgent. Can you please hold for 1 moment? Sure, but... Classical music filled my ear before I could finish the sentence. I waited, confused. What was going on? The music cut off. A different voice came on, male this time, deeper, with an edge of concern. Ms. Bennett, this is James Rothschild. I'm the managing director of this bank. I need to verify your identity. Can you tell me your father's date of birth? This was getting weirder by the second. June 15th, 1955. And his mother's maiden name? Harrison. What was his favorite book? I blinked. What kind of security question was that? East of Eden, by Steinbeck. He taught it every year and said it was the greatest American novel ever written. A long pause. Then, Miss Bennett, where are you right now? Why do you need to know that? Please, Miss Bennett. This is extremely important. Where are you? Something in his voice made me answer. I'm at the Sunset Motel on Highway 17. The Sunset Motel on Highway 17, he repeated, and I heard him relaying this information to someone in the background. Miss Bennett, I need you to stay exactly where you are. Don't leave your room. Don't use that card. Don't tell anyone you have it. Do you understand?
What?
No, I don't understand. What's going on? Someone will be there within the hour to explain everything. Please, Miss Bennett. This is crucial. Don't leave. Don't use the card. But 1 hour. I promise you'll have answers. Will you wait? I looked around my dingy motel room, at my soaking clothes, and my entire life packed into 1 suitcase. What else did I have to do?
Fine.
1 hour. Thank you. And Miss Bennett? I'm truly sorry for your loss. Your father was an extraordinary man. He hung up before I could ask what that meant. I sat there holding my phone and my father's credit card, my mind racing. What was happening? Why did a bank managing director personally answer a call about a credit card? Why did he care where I was? Why did he sound like he knew my father personally? And most importantly, what did he mean by your father was an extraordinary man? He was a teacher. A good one, sure. Students loved him. But extraordinary? The hour that followed was the longest of my life. I paced the tiny motel room. I called the bank back 3 times, but it just went to voicemail. I Googled Rothschild private banking and found almost nothing, just a discreet website with a login portal and an address in Manhattan. No information about services. No client testimonials. No flashy marketing.
Just money.
Old money. The kind that didn't need to advertise. At exactly 53 minutes after my phone call, there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman in her 60s, impeccably dressed in a gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase. Behind her was a younger man in a dark suit who looked like he'd stepped out of a Secret Service recruiting poster. I opened the door on the chain. "Can I help you?" "Miss Bennett," the woman asked. She had a kind face, warm brown eyes, and silver hair pulled back in an elegant knot. "My name is Margaret Harrison. I'm a senior trust officer with Rothschild Private Banking. This is my associate, David Chen. We're here about your father's account." I let them in, my heart pounding. They arranged themselves efficiently. Margaret sitting in a single chair, David standing by the door like a guard. I sat on the edge of the bed. "Miss Bennett," Margaret began, pulling papers from her briefcase. "I realize this must be very confusing. Let me start by saying that everything I'm about to tell you is true, documented, and legally verified. But I understand it may come as a shock." "Okay," I said slowly. "Your father, Richard Bennett, was not just a teacher." She pulled out a photograph and handed it to me. It showed my father, but not as I'd known him. He was younger, maybe in his 30s, wearing a suit I'd never seen, standing next to a man I vaguely recognized from history books. "Do you know who this is?" I squinted at the photo. "Is that Senator Morrison? From the Morrison family?"
Yes.
"Your father was his closest advisor for 15 years. Before that, he was a financial analyst for some of the wealthiest families on the East Coast. He was brilliant with money, Miss Bennett. Absolutely brilliant." I stared at her. "That's impossible. My father was a teacher. He lived in a small house. He drove an old car. He chose to live that way," Margaret interrupted gently. "After your mother died, he wanted a different life. A simpler life. So, he left the world of high finance and became the man you knew. But before he left, he made some very, very good investments. And he never touched them." She pulled out more papers. Bank statements. Investment records. All with my father's name on them. "Miss Bennett, your father's estate is held in trust with our bank. As his sole surviving heir, you are the primary beneficiary. Upon verification of your identity, which we've now completed, the full estate transfers to you." "How much are we talking about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Margaret looked at me with something like sympathy. "As of market close today, approximately $287 million. The room tilted. I actually felt it tilt, like the floor had become a ship's deck in a storm. "That's not possible," I said. "I assure you it is. Your father was an exceptional investor. He bought Amazon at $18 a share, Apple at $12. He invested in startups that became household names. And he never sold, just held and let it grow." She handed me a thick folder. "This is a summary of the holdings. Real estate, stocks, bonds, private equity. All of it yours." I couldn't breathe.
Couldn't think.
$287 million? Approximately. The market fluctuates, of course. It could be more tomorrow.
Could be less.
But yes, that's the current valuation. Why didn't he tell me? The words came out strangled. Why would he let me struggle? Let me work 2 jobs? Let me empty my savings to pay for my husband's student loans when he had. I couldn't even say it. The number was too big. Too impossible. "He was going to," Margaret said softly. "He set up a meeting with me for the week after he died. He was going to tell you everything, transfer the accounts, explain his reasons for waiting. But then the heart attack." She didn't finish. She didn't need to. My father had dropped dead in his classroom, grading papers. Massive coronary. The doctor said he probably didn't feel anything. But he'd felt enough to plan to tell me. He'd been ready. And then he died before he could.
There's more, Margaret said.
The trust included specific instructions from your father. He wrote them years ago, updated them regularly. Would you like me to read them? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Margaret pulled out a handwritten letter. I recognized my father's careful script immediately. My dearest Claire, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm so very sorry I never got to explain this to you in person. I know you must be confused and probably angry. Let me try to explain. When your mother died, I realized that all the money in the world couldn't save her, couldn't make her better, couldn't give us more time. I was making millions of dollars a year, and I couldn't do the one thing that mattered. So I walked away from that life. I became a teacher because your mother always said I would have been good at it. Because I wanted to make a difference in the way that actually matters, by helping young people think and grow and become better versions of themselves. But I didn't abandon the money. I just set it aside, let it grow, knowing that one day it would be yours. I wanted you to build your own life first, to know what it means to work, to struggle, to achieve things through your own efforts. I wanted you to become someone who earned respect rather than bought it. My only regret is that I waited too long. I should have told you sooner, should have prepared you better. But I was proud of you, Claire. So proud of the woman you became without the corrupting influence of wealth. You worked hard. You stayed kind. You helped others even when it cost you. Now it's time for you to have what's always been yours. Use it wisely. Use it well. But most importantly, use it to be happy, something I forgot how to be until I became a teacher and watched you grow up. I love you more than all the money in all the banks in all the world. Dad. I was crying before Margaret finished reading. Ugly, gasping sobs that shook my whole body.
My father had known.
He'd known I was struggling. He'd watched me work 2 jobs, watched me sacrifice, watched me give everything to a man who didn't deserve it. And he'd let me because he wanted me to learn. Part of me was furious. Part of me wanted to scream at the unfairness of it. But part of me, most of me, understood. If I'd known about the money at 18, at 22, at any point before now, I would have been different.
Softer.
Weaker. I wouldn't have developed the work ethic, the resilience, the sheer stubborn determination that had gotten me through the last 5 years. I would have been someone who could be broken by Derek throwing a suitcase on the porch. Instead, I was someone who was sitting in a motel room, discovering I was one of the wealthiest women in America. There's one more thing, Margaret said when I'd recovered enough to speak. The credit card you called about. Your father arranged for it to remain active indefinitely, to be available for you whenever you needed it. The spending limit is essentially unlimited. He wanted you to have immediate access to funds in case of emergency. I looked down at the black card in my hand. Unlimited spending limit. $287 million in the bank. My father's love made manifest in investments and interest and decades of patience. Miss Bennet, Margaret continued, I understand this is overwhelming.
Take your time.
But I do need to ask, is there anything you need right now? Anything we can help with? I thought about Derek, smug in our house with his new girlfriend. I thought about the divorce his lawyer would be filing. I thought about him saying I'd dragged him down. And I smiled. Actually, I said, yes. There are a few things I need. The first thing I did was call the best divorce attorney in the state. Not just good, the absolute best. The one Derek's firm had been too afraid to go up against. Her name was Patricia Simmons, and her retainer was $50,000. I paid it without blinking. Tell me everything, Patricia said when we met the next morning in her corner office overlooking the city.
I did.
The years of working to support him. The grandmother's inheritance that paid his loans. The down payment on the house. The credit cards maxed out for his temporary expenses. His lawyer girlfriend. The suitcase thrown on the porch in the rain. Patricia's expression got harder with every detail. And he's already lawyered up? She asked. He said his lawyer would be in touch. Do you know who?
No.
Doesn't matter. We'll find out. She made notes on a legal pad. Claire, I'm going to be honest with you. Washington is a community property state. Normally, that would mean he gets half of everything acquired during the marriage. I know, but there are exceptions, and we're going to use every single one of them. She looked up, and her smile was sharp. Inheritance isn't community property. Assets held in trust before marriage aren't community property. And if we can prove dissipation of marital assets, which it sounds like we can, given the money you spent on his education and loans, we can argue that he owes you reimbursement. How much reimbursement? Honey, by the time I'm done, Derek's going to wish he'd stayed married to you. How much did you spend on his law school? I pulled out the records I'd gathered. Tuition was $187,000 over 3 years. Living expenses during that time, approximately $75,000. Bar exam prep, $8,000. Student loan payments after graduation, $42,000. Plus the house down payment, $80,000. Patricia's eyes widened. $392,000. You spent almost $400,000 putting this man through law school and setting up his career. I was investing in our future, I said bitterly. Well, now we're going to get you a return on that investment. With interest. She started typing on her laptop. I'm going to file for divorce today. I'm going to request temporary exclusive use of the marital home. Kicking him out, basically. I'm going to file a lease pendens on the property, so he can't sell it or refinance it. And I'm going to request full reimbursement of all funds you contributed to his education and career advancement. Can you do that? Watch me. The paperwork was filed by 3 p.m. Derek was served at his office at 4 p.m. He called me at 4:07. What the fuck, Claire? Hello, Derek, I said calmly. I was sitting in a suite at the Four Seasons, my new temporary home, while I looked for something more permanent. Is there something I can help you with? You can't kick me out of my own house. It's not your house. I made the down payment. My name is on the deed. And according to the court order that was just filed, you have 48 hours to vacate the premises. This is insane. You don't have the money to fight me. I'm a lawyer, Claire. I know how this works. Then you should know that Patricia Simmons doesn't take cases she can't win. Silence. Then, Patricia Simmons? You hired Patricia Simmons. I did. Lovely woman. Very thorough. She's particularly interested in the $392,000 I spent on your education and career. Apparently, there's precedent for reimbursement in cases where one spouse makes significant contributions to the other's earning potential. You can't afford Patricia Simmons. Turns out I can. Funny how things work out. Where are you getting this money? Did you take out loans? Claire, this is financial suicide. Don't worry about my finances, Derek. Worry about yours. I'll see you in court. I hung up while he was still sputtering. The next call I made was to a real estate agent. I need to see everything available in the $3 to $5 million range. Something with history. Something special. By the end of the week, I'd made an offer on a Victorian mansion 3 blocks from Derek's office. It had 7 bedrooms, original stained glass, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and a price tag of $4.2 million. I paid cash. The divorce took 6 months. 6 months of Derek's increasingly desperate attempts to prove I'd somehow stolen money or committed fraud. 6 months of his lawyer, who was good, but not Patricia Simmons good, trying every trick to protect Derek's assets. 6 months of me walking past Derek's office every day on my way to my new home, just so he could see me. Patricia was ruthless. She documented every penny I'd spent, every sacrifice I'd made, every time Derek had promised temporary help that became permanent, every credit card statement showing his expensive dinners and golf outings while I ate ramen. And then she hit him with the big one, Melissa. Turns out Derek and Melissa had been having an affair for over a year. Patricia found hotel receipts, text messages, emails. The affair had started while Derek was still living off my money. I got the house, the one I'd made the down payment on. I got full reimbursement of every penny I'd spent on his education and career, with interest, $467,000. I got my grandmother's inheritance back, $125,000. I got compensation for emotional distress, $200,000. And I got the satisfaction of watching Derek walk out of the courtroom looking like he'd been hit by a truck. Ms. Donovan, Patricia said as we left the courthouse. I'd kept Derek's name through the divorce, planning to change it back legally afterward. That was the most satisfying case I've had in years.
Thank you, I said.
For everything. My pleasure. What are you going to do now? I looked up at the sky, at the sun shining down on a beautiful spring day. I have no idea, but I'm going to enjoy figuring it out. That was 2 years ago. Today, I'm sitting in my father's old office at Lincoln High School. They renamed it the Richard Bennett English Department Center and asked if I wanted to see it before the dedication ceremony. The room looks almost the same as I remember from visiting him as a child. Same bookshelves, now full of new books I donated. Same big desk, where students still come for extra help. Same window overlooking the football field. But there's a new plaque on the wall. In memory of Richard Bennett, teacher, mentor, and friend. He taught us that the greatest wealth is wisdom shared. I endowed a full scholarship program in his name. Full ride, tuition, room, board, books, for 20 students per year. Kids who work hard, who help others who need a chance. Kids like I was. I also started a foundation. The Bennett Foundation for Financial Literacy. We teach money management to high school students, help families struggling with debt, provide microloans to small businesses owned by women and minorities. My father taught me that money is a tool. What matters is how you use it. I used it to become someone he'd be proud of. As for Derek, last I heard, he was struggling. Turns out Melissa left him for a senior partner. His reputation took a hit after the divorce details went public. He's still at the firm, but his trajectory stalled. Meanwhile, I sit on 3 charitable boards. I've published a book about financial abuse in marriages, and I spend my time trying to make a difference. I still live in the Victorian mansion. I still drive a reasonable car. Okay, it's a Tesla, but still reasonable. I still pack my lunch most days. Because my father was right. The money doesn't change who you are. It just reveals it. And I'm my father's daughter. Through and through. I picked up the black credit card from where it sits in my wallet. I keep it there, even though I have plenty of my own cards now. I turn it over in my hands, thinking about that night in the motel, when I was at my lowest point. The bank had panicked when I called because the account had been flagged for years. Waiting for me. Ready for the moment I needed it. My father had known I'd need it someday. He'd prepared for it. He'd left me not just money, but a life raft for whenever I needed saving. He'd saved me one last time, 3 years after his death. And in doing so, he taught me the most important lesson of all. You don't need money to be rich. You just need to know what actually matters. I stand up, straighten my dress, and head downstairs to the dedication ceremony. There's a gymnasium full of students and teachers waiting, all there to honor a man who chose teaching over money and changed hundreds of lives in the process. Including mine. Most importantly, including mine. Because I'm not wealthy because I have $287 million, now closer to $340 million, thanks to good management and a bull market. I'm wealthy because my father taught me that the real measure of wealth is who you are when no one's watching. What you do with power when you have it. How you treat people who can't do anything for you. The credit card was never about the money. It was about having a father who loved me enough to wait.
To plan.
To know that I'd need help someday and make sure it was there when I did. That's the kind of wealth you can't buy. And it's the kind I'm going to spend the rest of my life paying forward. As I walk into the gymnasium to applause, I think about Derek throwing my suitcase on the porch. About standing in the rain, thinking my life was over. He thought he was discarding me. Instead, he freed me. And I used my father's card, not to buy things, but to buy freedom.
Justice.
A future. The bank had panicked because they'd been waiting for years for that card to be used. I was shocked because I discovered I'd never been poor at all. I'd always been rich. I just hadn't known it yet. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the push you need to discover who you really are. Sometimes being thrown out means being set free. Sometimes, loss reveals hidden strength. And sometimes, the people who love us most give us the greatest gifts when we need them most, even if they're not alive to see us open them. Claire thought she'd lost everything. Instead, she discovered she'd had everything all along. She just needed the right moment to access it. And Derek? He thought he was trading up. Instead, he traded the woman who would have walked through fire for him for someone who left the moment his career hit a speed bump. Know your worth. Build your own strength. And remember, the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's becoming so successful that they become irrelevant to your happiness. That's the real wealth. And it's available to everyone, with or without a credit card from a secret bank account. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is the push you need to discover who you really are. Sometimes being thrown out means being set free. Sometimes, loss reveals hidden strength. And sometimes, the people who love us most give us the greatest gifts when we need them most, even if they're not alive to see us open them. Claire thought she'd lost everything. Instead, she discovered she'd had everything all along. She just needed the right moment to access it. And Derek? He thought he was trading up. Instead, he traded the woman who would have walked through fire for him for someone who left the moment his career hit a speed bump. Know your worth. Build your own strength. And remember, the best revenge isn't cruelty. It's becoming so successful that they become irrelevant to your happiness. That's the real wealth. And it's available to everyone, with or without a credit card from a secret bank account. The dedication ceremony ended with a standing ovation. Students I'd never met cried as they talked about what my father's teaching had meant to their parents, their older siblings, their families. Teachers shared stories about the man who'd stayed late every day to help struggling students, who'd bought supplies out of his own pocket, who'd believed in kids everyone else had given up on. I stood at the back of the gymnasium, tears streaming down my face, understanding for the first time the wealth my father had actually accumulated. Not the $340 million in the bank. The lives he'd changed. The futures he'd shaped. The hope he'd given to kids who had none. That was the real fortune. The money was just money. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 19, with nervous eyes and a scholarship acceptance letter clutched in her hands. "Ms. Donovan," she said quietly, "I'm Sarah Martinez. I got one of the Bennett scholarships." "Sarah, congratulations. That's wonderful. I just wanted to say thank you. My mom works 3 jobs. My dad's not in the picture. Without this scholarship, I'd have had to skip college entirely. And now I'm going to state, studying engineering, and I'm going to be the first person in my family to graduate college." Her voice broke. "Your father taught my mom when she was in high school," she said. "He was the only teacher who ever believed in her. And now he's still helping us, even though he's gone." I hugged her. This stranger, who is connected to me through my father's legacy. "He'd be so proud of you, Sarah." "I'm proud of you. Can I ask you something?" she said as we pulled apart. "The rumor is, people say you sued your ex-husband and won millions. Is that true?" I smiled. "I sued him for what was mine, what I'd earned. And yes, I won." "Good." Sarah's expression hardened with a fierceness that surprised me. "My mom's boyfriend took all her savings and left. She never went after him because she didn't think she could win. But after I told her your story, she got a lawyer. She's getting her money back." "That's wonderful. You inspired her. You inspired a lot of people." Sarah glanced around at the thinning crowd. "My mom wanted me to tell you. Women talk about you. About how you didn't let him get away with it. How you stood up for yourself. You're like a hero to them." "A hero?"
Me.
"The woman who'd let a man use her for 5 years. But maybe that was the point. Maybe being a hero wasn't about being perfect. It was about standing up when it mattered. About fighting back when fighting seemed impossible." "Tell your mom I said she's the hero," I said. "For working 3 jobs. For raising you. For being brave enough to fight for what's hers. That's real strength." After Sarah left, I found Margaret Harrison waiting by the entrance. She'd come to the ceremony, she said, to pay her respects to my father. but I suspected she'd also come to check on me, to make sure I was handling the wealth appropriately. "Walk with me?" I asked. We strolled through the school hallways, past lockers covered in college pennants and student art, past the classroom where my father had taught for 20 years, past the trophy case where his photo hung among other distinguished faculty. "You've done well," Margaret said. "The foundation, the scholarships,
The book.
your father would be proud." "I hope so. I know so. He told me once, years before he died, that money was a test. Most people fail it. They either let it corrupt them or let the lack of it destroy them. But he believed you'd pass. He believed you'd use it the way it was meant to be used." "As a tool," I said. "Exactly." Margaret stopped at my father's old classroom door. The new teacher, Mr. Davis, was inside setting up for summer school, and he waved when he saw us. "Claire, there's something I need to tell you. Something your father made me promise to tell you after you'd had the money for at least a year." My stomach clenched. "What?" "The trust wasn't just money. Your father left specific instructions for projects. Things he wanted funded but didn't want traced back to him while he was alive." "What kind of projects?" Margaret pulled out her phone and showed me a list. My eyes widened as I read. Anonymous college fund for former students, $2.3 million distributed over 15 years. Medical debt forgiveness for Lincoln High families, $1.7 million. Secret repairs to the school building roof, HVAC, technology $800,000. Grocery store gift cards left in mailboxes of struggling families, $500,000. Anonymous bail payments for nonviolent offenders who couldn't afford release, $300,000. The list went on.
And on.
Dozens of small kindnesses, invisible helps, anonymous interventions. All funded by my father, all distributed so carefully that no one ever knew where the money came from. "He was doing this the whole time?" I whispered. "For 20 years. He'd identify families in need, quietly through observation, through casual conversations, and then arrange help through various channels. Always anonymous. Always untraceable." "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he wanted you to discover it yourself. To understand that wealth isn't about what you keep, it's about what you give. He hoped you'd continue his work. The trust includes funding to maintain these programs indefinitely if you choose." I looked at the list again. Saw the careful notations.
Saw the lives changed.
Saw my father's true legacy written in anonymous kindness and invisible generosity. "Of course I'll continue it," I said. "How could I not?" Margaret smiled.
"He knew you'd say that."
"That's why he left you everything. Because he knew you'd understand." That night, I sat in my father's library, the room I'd recreated in my Victorian mansion, filled with his books, his furniture, his presents. I'd bought every piece from his old house before it sold, recreating his space in mine. I opened my laptop and started reading through the full list of his secret projects. Each one had a story. Each one represented a family he'd helped, a crisis he'd averted, a disaster he'd prevented. There was Mr. Kim, who owned the corner grocery. My father had anonymously paid off his mortgage when Mr. Kim had cancer and couldn't work. The grocery stayed open, and the neighborhood kept its heart. There was the Martinez family, Sarah's family. My father had been paying their rent quietly for years after Sarah's father left. That's why they never became homeless, why Sarah's mom could work 3 jobs instead of 5, why Sarah had time to study and get good grades. There was Mrs. Anderson, whose husband died, leaving her with 3 kids and crushing medical debt. My father paid it all. She never knew where the money came from, just that one day the debt was gone and she could breathe again. Story after story. Life after life. All helped by a man who drove a 15-year-old Toyota and packed his lunch every day. I picked up my phone and called Margaret. "I want to expand the programs," I said. "Double the funding.
Triple it.
Whatever it takes." "Claire, the current programs distribute about $500,000 annually. If you triple that..." "I'm worth $340 million, Margaret. I think I can afford $1.5 million a year to help people." "It's not about affording it. It's about sustainability. Your father set these amounts carefully to ensure the trust could run indefinitely. Then we'll run them parallel. His trust continues as he designed it. I'll fund the expansion from my own discretionary accounts. Separate but coordinated. I heard Margaret smile through the phone. He really did choose the right heir. I'll draw up the paperwork. After we hung up, I sat in the dark library, surrounded by my father's books, and cried. Not sad tears. Grateful tears. Understanding tears. My father hadn't just left me money. He'd left me a blueprint for how to live. How to be wealthy without being obscene about it. How to help without humiliating. How to change lives without changing who you are. He'd left me the greatest inheritance of all. Purpose. 6 months later, I was in my office at the Bennett Foundation when my assistant buzzed. Claire, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Who is it? She says her name is Melissa Grayson. I sat up straighter. Melissa. Derek's Melissa. The woman he'd left me for. Send her in. Melissa entered looking nothing like the confident associate I'd seen in Derek's Instagram photos. She looked tired. Scared. Her designer suit was a season old. Her hair needed touching up. Her nails weren't manicured. She stood awkwardly in front of my desk, clutching a handbag like a shield.
Ms. Donovan, she said.
Thank you for seeing me. What do you want, Melissa? I want to apologize. That surprised me. Go on. I was wrong. About everything. I thought Derek was this amazing catch, successful lawyer, charming, ambitious. I thought I'd won some kind of prize. She laughed bitterly. Turns out I want a man who uses people and throws them away when he's done. He did it to you too? Of course he did. As soon as his career stalled and he couldn't provide the lifestyle I expected, he started looking elsewhere. I caught him with a paralegal last month. When I confronted him, he said the same things he must have said about you. That I was holding him back, that I didn't understand his potential, that he needed someone better. I should have felt vindicated. Should have felt satisfaction at her pain. Instead, I just felt tired. Why are you telling me this? Because I was wrong about something else too. I thought you were pathetic. Derek told me you were clingy, desperate, that you'd trapped him with guilt and obligation. He made you sound like this weak, needy woman who couldn't function without him. And now I know he was lying. You weren't weak. You were kind. You weren't needy. You were generous. You gave him everything, and he took it all and convinced himself he'd earned it. She met my eyes. I'm sorry. For my part in hurting you. For believing his version of events. For being the other woman. Apology accepted, I said. She blinked. Just like that. Just like that. You made a mistake. You believed a liar. You hurt me, yes, but carrying around anger about it doesn't hurt you, it hurts me. So yes, apology accepted. Is there anything else? I heard about your foundation. About the work you do helping women escape financial abuse. I was wondering. She twisted her handbag strap. I was wondering if you're hiring. I'm a good lawyer. I could help with the legal cases, the divorces, the asset protection. I studied her. Saw the sincerity. Saw the brokenness. Saw a woman who'd learned a hard lesson and wanted to make amends. You'd work for me? I asked. For the woman whose husband you stole? I'd work for the woman who turned her pain into purpose. And yes, I know I'm the last person you'd want to hire. But I'm good at my job, Claire. I really am. And I want to help women not make the same mistakes I did. Please. I thought about it. Thought about my father's anonymous kindness. Thought about second chances and redemption. I'll give you a trial period, I said. 3 months. You'll work directly under Patricia Simmons, who'll evaluate your performance. If you're good, really good, we'll discuss a permanent position. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. You won't regret this. I'd better not. After she left, Patricia called me. You hired Derek's mistress? Are you insane? Maybe. Or maybe I'm giving her a chance to do better. We both know what it's like to believe the wrong man. Patricia snorted. Fair point. Fine. But if she screws up, I'm firing her myself. Deal. 3 months later, Melissa proved herself invaluable. She was brilliant with complex asset cases, ruthless in depositions, and absolutely committed to helping women escape situations like the one she'd helped create for me. You know what's funny? She said one day over coffee. Derek called me last week. Wanted to get back together. Said he'd made a mistake, that I was the one he really loved. What did you say? I said I was done being someone's backup plan. That I'd learned from the best you, that you don't need a man to be complete. You just need self-respect and a good lawyer.
She grinned.
Then I hung up on him. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of me too, for the first time in my life. A year after the dedication ceremony, I got a call from Robert Chen, the managing partner at Derek's firm. Ms. Donovan, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted to reach out personally. About
Derek.
He's not doing well. His performance has declined significantly. His billable hours are down. We've had client complaints. We're considering terminating his partnership. Why are you telling me this? Because you're one of his references. From his law school applications. We're doing a comprehensive review, and your name came up. I wanted to ask, would you be willing to provide an honest assessment of his character? I thought about all the ways I could destroy Derek with a single phone call. All the things I could say about his character, his work ethic, his integrity. Mr. Chen, I said carefully, I can't provide a professional reference for Derek. Our relationship was personal, not professional. I never worked with him in a legal capacity. I understand. But personal character matters for partnership decisions. Then I'll say this. Derek is ambitious. He's intelligent. He's capable of excellent work when it serves his interests. Whether that makes him partnership material is your decision, not mine. That's diplomatically stated. I'm not interested in revenge, Mr. Chen. I'm interested in moving forward. Whatever Derek becomes or doesn't become is his responsibility, not mine. After we hung up, I felt something release in my chest. The last tie to Derek cut. The last bit of emotional investment withdrawn. I heard later that he was demoted to senior associate, that he left the firm eventually, that he moved to a smaller city and a smaller practice. I didn't feel victorious. I felt nothing. He'd become irrelevant to my happiness, which was the greatest revenge of all. 2 years after finding my father's credit card, I stood in front of a congressional committee testifying about financial literacy education. The greatest predictor of economic stability is intelligence, I told the assembled senators. It's not hard work. It's not even opportunity. It's financial literacy. Understanding credit. Understanding debt. Understanding that money is a tool, not a solution. I showed them statistics from our foundation's programs. Kids who took our financial literacy classes were 40% less likely to carry credit card debt. Women who attended our asset protection workshops were 60% more likely to leave financially abusive relationships. My father was a teacher, I continued. He understood that education changes lives. But we're not educating our children about the one thing that will affect every day of their adult lives: money. We need mandatory financial literacy education in every high school in America. Not as an elective, as a requirement. The committee asked questions. I answered them. Patricia and Melissa sat behind me, ready with supporting data. By the end of the hearing, we had commitments from 5 senators to sponsor legislation. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. Outside the Capitol building, reporters waited. Ms. Donovan, is it true you inherited over $200 million? Ms. Donovan, what's your response to Derek Grayson's interview claiming you financially manipulated him? Ms. Donovan, are you the wealthiest woman in Washington state? I stopped, straightened my shoulders, and spoke clearly. My father left me a gift. Not just money, but responsibility. I'm using that gift to help others. That's all I have to say. But the allegations from your ex-husband are irrelevant to my work. Next question. Is it true you're worth over $400 million now? I smiled. I'm worth whatever I can do to make the world better. The number in my bank account is just a tool for achieving that. Thank you all. I walked away to the sound of cameras clicking and reporters shouting questions. Patricia caught up with me. Derek did an interview? Apparently. Probably trying to salvage his reputation by attacking mine. Want me to sue him for defamation?
No.
Let him talk. The people who matter know the truth. And they did. The foundation's donations increased after Derek's interview, not decreased. Apparently, people weren't interested in the bitter complaints of a man who'd thrown away a good woman and regretted it. They were interested in what that woman built after she left. On the 3rd anniversary of my father's death, I stood at his grave with flowers and news. "Hi, Dad," I said, setting the flowers down. "Sorry it's been a while since I visited. I've been busy." The granite headstone read, "Richard Bennett, teacher, father, friend. He taught us that the greatest wealth is wisdom shared." I wanted to tell you, we got the legislation passed. Financial literacy is now required in public high schools across the state. It's a start. We're working on federal legislation next. A breeze rustled through the cemetery trees. The foundation's doing well. We helped 847 women leave abusive relationships last year. We taught financial literacy to 12,000 kids. We paid off medical debt for 200 families. We're expanding internationally next year. I sat down on the grass, not caring that my expensive dress would get stained. I met someone. His name is James. He's a teacher, chemistry, at the same school where you taught. He drives a 10-year-old Honda and packs his lunch every day. When I told him about the money, he said, "That's nice, but can you explain the Krebs cycle? Because I'm stuck on this lesson plan." I laughed, crying a little. "I think you'd like him. He reminds me of you." A crow landed nearby, cocked its head, flew away. "I finally understand why you waited to tell me. Why you let me struggle. If I'd known about the money at 22, I would have married Derek anyway, but for different reasons. I would have wondered if he loved me, or my money. I would have been suspicious and bitter, and probably would have lost the money in a bad divorce. I traced my father's name on the headstone. Instead, I know who I am without money. I know what I'm capable of. I know my worth, the real worth, not the dollar amount. And when Derek threw me away, I knew it was his loss, not mine. Because I'd already proven myself to the only person who mattered, me. The sun broke through the clouds, warming my face.
Thank you, Dad.
For waiting.
For trusting me.
For leaving me something more valuable than money. You left me the knowledge that I didn't need it. That I'm strong enough to survive anything. That wealth is something you build inside yourself, not something you keep in a bank. I stood up, brushed off my dress, prepared to leave. "Oh, and one more thing, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather. I'm naming him Richard if it's a boy. And I'm going to teach him what you taught me, that money is a responsibility, not a privilege. That wealth is measured in lives changed, not dollars earned. That the best thing you can leave behind isn't a fortune, it's a legacy of kindness." I touched the headstone one more time. "I love you, Dad. And I'm using your gift exactly the way you'd hoped I would. Watch me." 5 years after using my father's credit card for the first time, I stood in my home library, his library, recreated and expanded, with my son on my hip and James beside me. Little Richard was 2 years old, with his father's green eyes and my father's curiosity. He grabbed at everything, asked questions constantly, and refused to sit still for more than 3 seconds. He was perfect. "Read, Mama," he demanded, pointing at the bookshelves. "Which book?" "All books." James laughed. He's got his grandfather's love of literature. Or, at least of grabbing books off shelves. I pulled down East of Eden, my father's favorite, with his notes still in the margins, and read the opening lines. Richard didn't understand them, of course, but he listened with the same intense concentration my father used to have. "You know what I was thinking?" James said, watching us.
"What?"
"We should start a scholarship for kids who want to be teachers. Full ride, but they have to commit to teaching in underserved communities for at least 5 years after graduation." The Bennett Davis Teaching Scholarship? Perfect. I know teaching doesn't pay much, but if we can remove the debt burden, maybe more good people will choose education. I kissed him. This is why I love you. You get it. I get that money is just a tool. And you have a very big toolkit. My phone buzzed. Margaret. Margaret. Board meeting reminder tomorrow. Also, you've hit $500 million net worth as of market close today. Congratulations. I showed James the text. $500 million, he said, shaking his head. That's obscene. That's responsibility, I corrected. How much good can we do with $500 million? All of it. We can do all of the good. We spent that evening planning the teaching scholarship, an expansion of the medical debt forgiveness program, a new initiative to provide free financial counseling to families in crisis, a fund to pay bail for nonviolent offenders who couldn't afford release. Every dollar assigned, every cent given purpose. Because that's what my father had taught me. Wealth without purpose is just numbers on a screen. Wealth with purpose is the power to change the world. 10 years after Derek threw my suitcase on the porch, I was invited back to his law firm to speak about financial literacy for their pro bono program. I almost said no. But then I thought, why not? Why should I avoid a place just because Derek worked there? This wasn't about him. This hadn't been about him for years. I arrived in a simple suit, expensive but understated, and was escorted to a conference room full of lawyers. Derek wasn't there. Of course he wasn't. He probably couldn't face me. I gave my presentation, talked about the foundation's work, explained how lawyers could help by offering pro bono services for asset protection in divorce cases, showed them the impact they could make. The applause when I finished was genuine. Several attorneys signed up on the spot to volunteer. As I was leaving, Robertson stopped me. Ms. Donovan, thank you for coming. And thank you for that character reference you gave years ago. The one where I said Derek was ambitious and intelligent?
Yes.
It was exactly what we needed to hear. What you didn't say spoke volumes. What happened to him? He left the firm 3 years ago. Opened a small practice in Spokane, I believe. Last I heard, he was doing personal injury work. I hope he's happy. Robert studied my face. You really mean that? I do. Anger is exhausting. Forgiveness is freeing. I chose freedom. He didn't deserve you. No, I agreed. But I deserved to learn what I was worth. So in a way, I should thank him for throwing me out. It led me exactly where I needed to go. 15 years after using my father's credit card, I sat in a television studio for an interview about my book, Wealth Without Worth: How Money Reveals Character. The interviewer was young, ambitious, clearly hoping for sound bites. Ms. Donovan, you're one of the wealthiest women in America. Some estimate your net worth at over $800 million. How does it feel to have that much money? Heavy, I said honestly. Every dollar is a responsibility. Every investment a decision about what I'm supporting. Every expense a choice about what I'm prioritizing. Money isn't freedom. It's obligation. But surely you enjoy it? The houses, the cars, the luxury. I live in one house. I drive one car. I own 12 pairs of shoes. The luxury isn't in having more, it's in having enough. Your ex-husband recently published an op-ed claiming you destroyed his career out of spite. How do you respond? I smiled. I respond by not responding. Derek's career is Derek's responsibility. What happened between us was settled in court years ago. I've moved on. He clearly hasn't. Does it bother you that he's still talking about you?
No.
Because his opinions stopped mattering to me the day he threw my belongings on a porch in the rain. That was the day I learned that other people's perception of me is none of my business. I know who I am. That's enough. What would you say to women in similar situations? Women being financially controlled or abused? I looked directly at the camera. I'd say, document everything. Open a bank account in your name only. Build your own credit. Know what you're worth, both in terms of what you've contributed and what you deserve. And if someone treats you like you're disposable, believe them and leave. You don't need permission to save yourself. You don't need approval to choose yourself. You just need courage. The interview went viral. The foundation's hotline received 10,000 calls in the week after it aired. Women leaving. Women fighting back. Women finding their strength. That's when I knew my father's gift had been used correctly. 20 years after finding that credit card, I stood at another dedication ceremony. This time, it was for the Bennett Center for Financial Empowerment, a 50,000 square foot facility offering free financial counseling, legal services, career training, and childcare. James stood beside me, silver-haired now, still teaching chemistry and still packing his lunch. Richard, now 17, stood on my other side, tall and serious and planning to study education in college. Your grandfather would be proud, I told him as the ribbon was cut. I wish I'd known him. You do know him. Every time you help someone with their homework, every time you stand up for someone being bullied, every time you choose kindness over popularity. That's him. That's his legacy, living through you. Richard squeezed my hand. I'm going to be a teacher, Mom. Like Grandpa. Like Dad. The world needs good teachers. You could have told me to be a doctor or a lawyer. You know, something that makes money. Money isn't the point, kiddo. Impact is. And good teachers change lives. They change the world. Is that what Grandpa did? That's exactly what he did. That night, back in my library, I pulled out my father's credit card. It sat in a frame now, mounted on the wall with his letter. I'd never used it again after that first call.
Never needed to.
But I kept it as a reminder. Not of money, but of timing. Of a father who knew exactly when his daughter would need him. Of love that transcends death. Of gifts that arrive at the exact right moment. The bank had panicked because they'd been waiting for me to call for years. I'd been shocked because I discovered I'd had everything I needed all along. My father hadn't just left me money. He'd left me proof that I was loved, that I was worthy, that I mattered enough for him to plan for my future even after he was gone. That's the real wealth. And no divorce, no betrayal, no struggle could ever take it away. I stood in my library, surrounded by my father's books and my family's love, and knew with absolute certainty I was rich beyond measure. Not because of the numbers in my accounts, but because I knew what those numbers were for. And I was using them exactly the way my father had hoped I would. With wisdom, with purpose, with love. The credit card had saved me that night in the motel. But my father's real gift, his belief in me, his patience, his perfect timing, had saved me long before I ever found it. And that's the inheritance that truly mattered. Yellowheart, thank you for watching. If this story moved you, don't leave without thumbs up, liking. It helps more people find this story. Speech balloon commenting, share your thoughts or your own journey, bell subscribing, so you never miss another true life story. Your support keeps stories like this alive. And, trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Stay strong. Stay brave.
Stay you.
Glowing Star, see you in the next story. Glowing Star.